Now, last time you recollect, Nivedita, that we had spoken about along north of the Brahmaputra in the present days Arunachal area, where I was very impressed by Ramakrishna Mission School, which lauded every religion in four walls and for all their students, no matter which faith they belong to. And now, I must tell you that there are a number of Christian schools in Nagaland and Tirap Frontier Division and in Arunachal, where the padris try and convert everybody to Christianity. Now, though that is permitted in the constitution, it is not liked very much by the present day population of India. That is either conversion to Islam or to Christianity. So there's a lot of violence on this, especially amongst the tribal regions. And now I always say that people should take the example of the army, basically, not so much the Air Force and Navy, because they are highly educated. The army is not that educated with its troops. But whether we are Muslims or Hindus or Sikhs or Jains or Buddhists or whatever, we laud every religion, and we celebrate every community's religious days most happily together, join them in their prayers. And as I told you once earlier, we have a religious teachers school, which commissions people as a junior commissioned officer. And they are padris and mullahs and pandits and granthis and you name it. And they attend all religious ceremonies in the unit. So we eat from the same langar, we live together, we enjoy each other's company, and we fight as colleagues, as soldiers. So I think that example has been there right since partition, when India got its independence. But politically speaking, I think every political party likes to make divisions so that they can get electoral votes. So whereas the Constitution gives every Indian a right to be a citizen of India, equal to everybody else, and with the power of the vote, the point here is that the political parties try and create divisions in the country. Now, that's a sad affair. We have to get past this. Now, when we get past this, we require a lot of maturity to do that. And the Indian Army is a good example for everybody. There are more than 1 million men, 1.3 million, and they have no religious or caste feelings about each other. We all one, all brotherhood. Anyway, carrying on with the Eastern Army, I'm still wearing the Eastern Army tie with the rising sun in the east. You know, when I was commanding the division in Sikkim as a major general, that was in 1980, I had requested my superiors to allow me to make a highway from the plains of Bengal right up to the Tibetan plateau, part of which is with us, since the Tista rises north of the Great Mountains. And it was turned down that if you make a beautiful road like this, the Chinese will come down the road. I said as a major general that, look, it's not the Chinese that are going to come down the road, it's we who are going to go up this road to the Tibetan plateau to defend our borders there. Anyway, I was shot down there. When I became Eastern Army commander, without any by or leave from either the army headquarters or the government, I decided to send tanks up to the plateau. Now, we had an independent squadron of the Central India Horse, commanded with a very pushing officer, a very good officer, who was a major. His name was Mohanty, Major Mohanty. He's from the Central India Horse. And I visited him and I discussed this issue with him. He said, okay, sir, you give the orders, we'll do it. So what we did was that we, from North Bengal, driving up to Gangtok was no problem because the road is good. And we loaded 5 T-54 tanks, that's the Russian tank, slightly older model than the one we have now, into engineered dumper trucks. You know, the engineers have a huge truck which can carry sand and bricks and material for construction work or for bridge construction. And it's a tipper. That means the load can be dumped by the whole thing leaning like that, and the stuff comes down. So what we did was that we found that this T-54 tank could fit inside the engineered dumper truck. So we had a regiment of engineers there, and we borrowed 5 of the dumper trucks with their assistance, of course. And we leaned it down and climbed these 5 tanks onto their back. Now, they are a vehicle which has got about 3 axles. That means they've got 6 wheels, 4 at the back and 2 in front. See? So the weight is distributed correctly. And how you gauge the strength of a bridge, for instance, is that what is the weight put on the bridge by, let us say, a tank or a vehicle at the point where it is going. And if the weight is too much, the bridge will collapse. See? But we felt that when we put it in the dumper truck, the distribution of the weight of the tank was such that we would not have at a point on the bridge the amount of weight that might break the bridge. Anyway, we managed to get up to Bangkok, and from there we took these 5 vehicles with an escort of a company of engineers to a place called Chung Tang, which is in North Sikkim, where the Tista River comes from the Great Mountains joins, and the tributary, the Lachin Valley and the Lachung Valley, as it is known, comes and joins there, and that becomes the main Tista River, which comes down to the North Bengal plains. From Chung Tang, there was no road to go up to the plateau. And it's quite a distance. It's about 80 kilometers or so, or 90 kilometers. And we sent these vehicles forward. There was a footpath. We sent them along the footpath, and there were footpath wooden bridges. And as we went along and took these vehicles onto these bridges, the bridges broke. But we had an engineer company which got hold of trees and beams and things and put up the bridge again so that we could cross these vehicles. And where the footpath is narrow, and these vehicles are very broad. I mean, you require 15 feet of width, 18 feet of width. So the engineers would blast the hillside, and the Tisa River was gushing below. And we made that progress slowly, slowly, till we reached the high altitude plateau. I can say this, that we felt very thrilled that we could do this. And I never told anyone about this. I just ordered it, and it was done. And after my 5 tanks had reached there, I asked them slightly below the plateau. The plateau is about 16,500 feet, the Tibetan plateau, beyond the great range of the Himalayan mountains. We kept it a place slightly short of that, where the height was not 16,500, but about 15,000 feet, where the quantum of snow and cold, etc., is slightly less. We parked them there. Now we had to go through the winter and the next summer, and we practiced our cruise. You'll be amazed to know that the oil, for instance, that you put in your engines, right? It tends to freeze at that point. You have to have a lighter oil. And even for trucks, we had some trucks over there. During the night, when the temperature drops to minus 20 or minus 30 Celsius, the oil and water on the engine and all that freezes. So you have an antifreeze mixture which you put in the water for the cooling of the engine. And for the oil, you build a fire underneath the engine sump. You build a fire so that it keeps warm. Otherwise, it'll freeze. Then you have to have a lighter viscosity oil. So we demanded that from the EME and the ordnance, and they knew this experiment was being done, and I must give it to them. Without any orders from superior headquarters, they suggested various types of oils that we could use because they themselves wanted to see how that goes. So we did all these experiments. Then, you have a big gun on the tank. It has a breech at the back from which you load the gun, right? So that breech has to move up and down. It has to have oil to make it move smoothly. Now that oil would freeze. With the result, we had to have thinner oil for the breech block of the guns also. Because we learned so many lessons by getting tanks up there. Then we found that I said, you have to do some firing. Now, what we did was at about 2,000 meters or so, we selected a part of the hillside, huge hills on both sides. And we said, fire at them. So we put targets and made the child fire machine gun and main gun. The main gun is a big shell. Uh, and we found that the various sighting instruments, like you've got a telescope with sighting on it, so you can have an aiming mark for a range of 800 meters or 1,000 meters or 1,500 meters or 2,000 meters or whatever. So you set the gun accordingly, the gun gets elevated, and according to that, you fire the shot. And the shot is supposed to land on the target. But if we fire the gun at, let us say, 1,000 meters with the range, the shell would go at about 3,000 meters. In other words, because of the rarefied atmosphere, the shell of the gun, whether it's a machine gun or whether it's a main gun, travels far greater distances and has a higher trajectory. So we had to redo the sighting instruments that we had got from Soviet Union at that time to decide as to what ranges to put at this height to get yourself on the target. There's something else I must tell you about the Tibetan Plateau, which we had noticed when I was there as a division commander. Your vision is very, very far. You can see a distance of 30, 40 kilometers. Now, you can't do that in the plains, because in the plains, what happens is, that's provided you have a normal eyesight, or you, somebody like me who wears spectacles gets a normal eyesight by wearing spectacles. With the naked eye, you can see 40, 50 kilometers. It's because the atmosphere is so rare, there's no dust in the atmosphere, that the vision of the human being becomes much longer. Now, if you put a telescope, I mean, if you look through a telescope or a binocular, then even things at 40, 50, 60 kilometers look as though it's just next to your nose. There's a Tibetan town called Khambazong, north of our borders of North Sikkim, which must be about 40 or 50 kilometers from our international border with China. And we could see trucks moving along the road and all that. We were amazed as to how we could see. So all these factors come into the question of how to prepare and act in battle at such heights. You have to, besides the problem of the human being is not designed to live at that high altitude. You have to get acclimatized. And it takes about, as I've told you all this before, it takes you about 2, 3 weeks to get acclimatized to get to those heights. But nevertheless, we get pulmonary edema and so many diseases. And most of the people who used to get these diseases were the strong people of the battalion, the wrestlers and the athletes, because they thought they were better than everybody else and walked faster and all that. One of the great lessons was that you may be whatever you are, but you have to respect nature and the height and walk easy, breathe deeply. If you feel uncomfortable breathing, you have to say so you can be given medication, right? And you don't have to prove yourself to be physically better than somebody else. You have to take it easy. All right. So we managed to get these 5 tanks up here. Now, when we were doing the firing and all that, the Chinese on the other side came to know that we have got heavier weapons up here. And that put them into hell of a flat. There were all sorts of scurry of movement in Tibet. For them, they didn't have any tanks. But when they found that the Indians had brought tanks, then they started building roads and things to try and get tanks up there. So anyway, it's a different ball game now. You noticed in Ladakh, both the Chinese army and us have got everything we want at those heights. So here, I informed the army headquarters later that we've done this. And we want them to give us a better road. We want a class 40 highway with huge bridges and things so that two-way traffic can be done. Of course, they poo-pooed that. Much later in life, I had convinced them to build these roads, but then they wouldn't give the money. They accepted, yes, all right, we build the roads. They're still building the roads. They're still today, because the amount of money required for building roads in these areas is very large, and it has to be budgeted for in due course of time or given priority over other budgetary expenditure. If you recollect that when I was commanding the 17 Mountain Div, I had a helicopter crash. I had told you all about this earlier. And this helicopter crash was on the eastern side of the Tibetan area in our control, whereas the Tisa River comes down from the western side. So it was about maybe 20 kilometers from where we had taken these troops. Now, as an army commander, I visited here, and as an army commander, I'm permitted to take my wife with me in the helicopters and aircraft because has to look after the welfare of troops and their families, and if any complaints, she has to come back and sort that out. So she is authorized by government as an army commander's wife to travel to any part of the border regions to look at the welfare of the Jawans and troops and talk to them about their families and about their children and to see whether she can help them out for any problems. So I took her, and she was very good enough to go to Flurries in Calcutta and buy a whole lot of cakes. You know, Flurries cakes in Calcutta were quite tasty, and so we had cakes about the size of a Christmas cake. And there we dished these cakes out to officers and Jawan, and everybody's so thrilled to get Flurries cakes from the senior lady of the Eastern Command. When I went there, there were two battalions there because I had given instructions that you have to do an operation alert and build defenses right up to the border area, which they were doing. And we had a Sikh light infantry. As I told you earlier, these must be Sikhs, very powerful and strong. And a major was in command. And while I was talking to them, I said, I had a helicopter crash on the eastern end of this Tibetan plateau, which is in our control. And, my ADC, Captain Mike Bhalla in those days, he eventually retired as a brigadier. He had got hold of one of the lights of the helicopter. The two lights were a red light and a green light. He had managed to put that in his pack without my knowing. And he brought it back. And one day, Srupi and I went to him and his Sikkimese wife's house for dinner or something. And this light was on his mantelpiece, blinking away like this. So I said, look, where did you get that? He said, this is the helicopter crash which you and I had. I said, you heard of a chap? You should have at least got the green, you got the red light. You should have got the green light for me. Anyway, I told the story to the Sikh elite. So the major said, okay, sir, you will find that wreckage of yours and get you something. What do you want from it? So I said, I don't know what I want because the helicopter is in a mess. And people have, the Air Force has also stripped certain working parts which were available for spare parts. So I don't know what is left there, probably just the hulk. So see if you can find something interesting and get it from them. So they sent a patrol. And when I went back to Calcutta, about a month later, I got a message from this battalion up in the high altitude region to say that, we sent a section of Jawans led by a Havaldar. Say, look, you find that wreckage that the army commander had of some helicopter and select some nice little part, whatever it is, and you can cut that out and bring it. Now, the Sikhs, must be Sikhs are very good fighters. They can't understand these minor things in life. So what part to take, what not to take. So he says, what they've done is they picked up the whole wreckage and they brought it here. And you please tell us what part of it you want. So I thought about this. I said, all right, maybe the door, which is half open, half off the frame anyway, you can detach that and you can send me the frame of the door. And sure enough, a few weeks later, these unkempt, smelly 10 Sardars from the Sikh elite landed up in Calcutta in my house. And my guard informed me that there's some horrible looking fellows who have arrived here to see, they want to see you. I said, yes, please send them in. And we met them in the lawn. Srupi and I thanked them and they sent the door and gave it to us. We still have that. We don't know where to put it actually. So when I went there, I told the two battalions, there was a Rajput battalion and there was a Sikh elite battalion. I asked them, I said, look, there's a lot of fear in the mind of the government of India about what the Chinese did to us in 1962. And it takes us time to convince them that we can do much more than just be fearful. And I must tell you, the morale of these people, they said, sir, sir, you give us the hukam. Tell us, we'll go and capture that bloody Lhasa before they know what's happening. That's the morale of the Indian army there. So though in the newspapers and all that you hear that, oh, this Gilwan action took place and the Indians confronted and all that, rest assured that the morale of our troops is so high that they're itching to thrash the Chinese if they get a chance. We see where that goes now, because the new foreign minister, as of today's news, is going to take over in China. And he has made a statement in America before coming there. He was their ambassador in America. He has made a statement that there is no question of not having friendly relations with India. China and India must have friendly relations, and both they and us agree with that, and we shall work with that. But while they speak like that, what they do is they nibble at your border. They try and push you out, and if you go away, they take the territory. This is the point. So, as I said to you earlier, I think in the whole world, it's only the Indian army and perhaps the Vietnamese army who can stand up to the Chinese. European armies will not be able to stand up. Uh, Now, in Calcutta, I met a lot of friends. And one of them was a chap called Hurricane Roy. I don't know if you heard this name. If you know NDTV channel, there's Pranay Roy and Radhika Roy who have been owning it, and recently it's been taken over by Adnani. But otherwise, they are the promoters of NDTV 24/7. This Hurricane Roy is his father, Pranay Roy's father. He's a top communist man in Calcutta, a very pleasant person. He made a lot of friends with me because he visited me when I came there to my house, and he gave me a rare packet of tea, which would be very expensive in the market. I'm very happy to receive that, and we made friends. And he used to invite me to his house and party. They're very well off financially. He's got a lot of tea gardens in Assam. And he told me that they have made a killing as far as the sale of tea leaves is concerned in Japan. So I said, how did that happen? He said, what happened is that in Japan, the corporate sector were trying to beat the Americans as to what do they serve to their top corporate guests and honchos who come along to make a deal. You know, when you went to America, they served you rye whiskey. To these people, the Japanese used to serve rare Scotch whiskey when they used to come. But then they said that, look, Scotch whiskey has become common or garden. I mean, everyone does that. We want something more rare than rare Scotch whiskey. So Hurricane Roy decided in his, he had a lot of tea garden to try and experiment. You know, when the tea bush grows, at a certain season, yellow flowers come up on top. After that, green shoot leaves come up. The little yellow flowers are also tea, but they're the flower portion of the tea bush. So what he did was, in a bush, there are hardly one or two of these, maybe three of these, tea bush. There's one or two, three of these yellow flowers. So he decided to collect and do an experiment only the yellow flowers and make a tea out of that. That became a golden tea. And because you're picking only certain, not picking all the leaves, you are picking only a few leaves from the bush that's yellow flower, and you're making the tea out of that. So it becomes a golden tea. Very expensive. So let us say if 1 kg of tea goes for about 500 rupees, this will be going at about 3,000 or 4,000 rupees. See, that's the difference. So he went to the Japanese people. He said, look, I've given you this golden tea, and this is the amount to pay. And he made hell of a sale in Japan of this tea. He came back through a huge party called Sloopy and me also, and we really enjoyed his hospitality because he had made hell of a whack of money over there. I told you earlier about Jyoti Bosu when I met him when I was a major in Calcutta, and a very dapper, well-dressed person drinking rare Scotch whiskey with, right? And I said, You don't look the part. He said, well, I'm off duty at the moment, so I'm a normal gentleman. But when I'm a communist, I'm a different person. See? So I must explain to you that communists are as human and as decent as anyone else, and they live a good life, except when they're at the hustings, when they have to try and capture political power. So this Hurricane Roy told me that, look, as far as I know, you're the senior most army commander of the Indian Army. I said, yes, it is so. He said, then will they make you the army chief? Because, I'm a good friend of yours and I'd like you to become the army chief. So I said, we don't know. That's a question of selection as to who becomes, and anyone can become. It doesn't have to be the senior one. He said, let me see your hand. So I showed him my hand. He took one look at it. He said, don't worry, you're going to be the army chief. And when you become the army chief, you're going to throw a big party for me and my family. I said, all right, let's see how that goes. This is Hurricane Roy. There's another little incident that took place while I was army commander. There was an officer called uh, Billu Sethi. He was a major in one of my regiments of which I was a colonel. I was colonel of 66 Armored Regiment, which I had commanded, and I was also colonel of 87 Armored Regiment, which they had wanted me to be their colonel when they were under my command, when I was a corps commander, right? And I'd run them in exercises and all that and found them a very good regiment. So I decided, okay, I'll be your colonel. So this boy was from 87 Armored Regiment, very good boy, very, very efficient officer. And when I got posted from command of one corps to the College of Combat, or now the Army War College, as the commandant, I had to have a staff officer at the rank of major, which I was authorized, a personal staff. So I had rung up the MS branch in Army headquarters. The military secretary was the Lieutenant General Ajay Singh Bhimbarwala. He's got a brother who's in the diplomatic corps, a very sharp-headed man, who's a friend of mine at the golf course. Anyway, I rang up Ajay and I said, look here, I want to take this Billu Sethi as my staff officer to the College of Combat. And if I go up further in life, that he'll remain on my staff. But before I take him, he belongs to 87 Armored Regiment, and after the present CO has finished his tenure, which will be another year and a half, I would like this officer to take away 87 Armored Regiment. Is that a deal? So he said, yes, you can arrange that. So I said, well, if it's a deal, then I'll train him further by taking him on my staff, because I like to train the younger officers who are taking over regiments. So I took him to Mao, the College of Combat. And after my 1 year odd at Mao, I took him to Eastern Army. He's on my personal staff as a major. I got a call from the military secretary, and he said, I'm sorry, sir, this officer has to be posted to command one of our very good regiments, Hind, you see, because they did very well, both in the 65 war. And are you hearing me? I've got a notice that the internet is not very stable. Are you hearing me all right? Okay. So he said he has to be posted to command Pune House. I said, look here, you promised me, and I've got a letter from you in writing that this officer will take over 87 armored. Now, why do you say that he is now being promoted to Lieutenant Colonel to take over the Pune House? He says, because the Colonel of Pune House, Lieutenant General Anuj Singh, who was a Mahavir Chakra and he was a hero of the 71 war, has personally requested the army chief, that is General Sundarji, since they don't have somebody to take over that regiment when that present CO was posted out, they wanted this officer. He was originally from Pune Horse before he came to the new raising of 87 Armored Regiment. And the chief has agreed, so he put it on the file. So I said, it's a very bad show. Didn't you tell the chief that you had already promised that he should take over 87? And yes, of course, Pune Horse is a very famous regiment. But 87 urban regiment will also be very famous because they get an opportunity to go to war. After, it's only when you get the chance to go to war that you can show your colors, then you show your capability. And I said, it's a damn good regiment. It's as good as any in the Indian Army. And so therefore, there's no reason why you should not command that. So he says, I'm sorry, but it's written on the chief's file, let me count it. So this incident took place, and I took a dim view of the fact that the MS branch, having given me a written assurance that something would happen, but just because of some personal relationship between the colonel of Spooner Horse and the chief, this was completely changed. And luck would have it, a few months later, when my orders came out to be the next army chief, then this MS branch rang me up and he said, sir, now that the chief is retiring in May 88 and you are going to be the next chief, you can change the orders. So if you want, I will change this officer's posting and he can then go command 87 Armored. I got very angry with him. I said, when a chief of army staff has written on the file that something will be done, how dare you suggest to me that just because I'm going to be the next chief, I can change the orders? I said, nobody changes the orders of an army chief. And please understand that. I said, wake up and don't allow your personal feelings to get above the disciplinary requirement of how you have to conduct your office. Give him hell for that. So I'm just wanting to tell you that no matter what your decisions, if an army chief has written something in the file, that will jolly well be done, whether you like it or whether you don't like it. Now, in Calcutta, for these various parties, the people used to have a lot of parties, and I used to attend those with Rupi. There's a lot of talk of the Bofors scandal. Now, if you recollect the Bofors scandal, Bofors is a very good gun. It is a Swedish gun. But apparently, the Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi had given orders to the company, that Bofors company, and to the Indian establishment of Defense Ministry who buys the gun, to say that there'll be no brokerage. That means what brokers are authorized by the company which is producing the gun to make it sale to various countries in the world. And India is a very important country because sale in India is more than any other country in the world other than China, right? And China is basically buying from Russia, but India is buying from all over the world, weapons and equipment. So our demand is not in tens and twenties as European countries. Our demand is in hundreds and thousands, you see, of weapons. So we had got a contract of some, I think it was 440 Bofors guns. And in this deal, the stipulation was that there'll be no brokerage paid by the company to brokers who try and get past the government of India to buy this gun, because there were 4 or 5 guns that were trying to be competing to be sold to India. There was an Italian gun, there was a French gun, there was a British gun, and there was this Swedish Bofors. So there were 4 or 5 guns, which are very good, all of them trying to compete with this. But as luck would have it, the Indian authority decided to buy the Bofors. And then the story came out that though Rajiv Gandhi had made a statement that no brokerage will be given or accept, and therefore what the company would pay for brokerage, they should reduce that much of the price, immediately to government of India, that to get him to buy this gun, he got 64 crores or something like that of money under the table. Right. Now, whether this was true or not, we don't know. But I think the opposition in the parliament found that this was a good stick to beat the prime minister with, because after all, in politics, you're not bothered about the fact of a statement or its rightness or wrongness. You're only bothered about how to get the other guy out so that you become the next political boss. So the opposition got together, a whole lot of them, and they made a huge outcry all over the country and in the newspapers and everybody that he was a corrupt prime minister, you must get rid of him. As you recollect, he only did 5 years and then he was out. Somebody else came in there. Mr. VP Singh came in there. So people used to tell me about this guy. Now, what the high society in Calcutta came to the conclusion that when you take a bribe for buying an equipment, that equipment may not have be good enough. It may have certain faults. That means you bribe somebody to take that equipment because it's not as good as somebody else's equipment. But since I had tested this gun myself, when it came to my division when I was commanding 17 Mountain Div, I tested the high altitude thing. I found it an excellent weapon. There was no better. I'd also tested two, three others. There were no comparison with the Bofors. And but everywhere in the press, because of the so-called 64 crores or something, people said that it's a useless piece of equipment that the Indian Army has been forced to buy. And the contract was to buy 440. Because the then Congress government got so afraid of the huge outcry in the country about purchase of this weapon, they cut the contract to take only about 400 guns, and there were 40 guns to come free to us. They didn't take that. See, with the result, we got circuited by 40 guns. It would have come to us free, provided we had bought the 400. So we had bought the 400, and the 40 free guns never came to us because of this outcry. So that shows how the government reacts to public opinion, rightly or wrong. Now, I used to tell everybody in Calcutta, in these parties, that look, you're beating the wrong horse because the gun is an excellent gun. So if Rajiv Gandhi got 64 crores under the table, but that's between you and him. But as far as the gun is concerned, don't bring that down because it's an excellent piece of equipment. It's better than the Italian gun and better than the French gun and better than the British gun. There's no doubt. I have to try and tell them. More about this later when I became the chief because Bofors became a very hot subject and we had a lot of problems dealing with the politicians than anything to do with this guy. I was asked by General Sundarji that, the Sri Lanka operations had started in his tenure. He had been, the Sri Lanka problem, I will describe that in some detail later on. Sri Lanka problem was that the Tamils had created a terrorist group called the Tamil Tigers. And they wanted freedom of Tamil areas of Sri Lanka from the rest of the government because the Tamils were not being treated well by the Sinhalese majority. And so Prabhakaran, who was the leader of the Tamil underground, was visiting various nations, including India. And he had got a bit of one-to-one with Rajiv Gandhi, I'm told, to give him some support. In the event, what is the truth behind this? The case goes back to the British Raj. What happened was that the British Raj, when it occupied Ceylon, as it is known as, and Madagascar, not Ceylon, and Mauritius, for example, two examples, they imported labor from India, cheap labor, to make tea gardens and sugarcane fields and things like that, because the local people were not that good as far as hard work of preparing fields for sugarcane or for tea gardens and things like that.